is Tuesday. I am Matt. This is Why Libertarian. It's decentralize everything night. If you are unaware, if you're the first time watcher of this program, I am basically on every single Monday through Friday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We talk about liberty, we talk about decentralization, we talk about freedom and all the good stuff that comes with all of those things. So tonight is no different. Before I get rolling with our guest, as usual, like, comment, subscribe, share, hit the notification bell, really help us with that algorithm on YouTube, and retweet, get this out there. And really, you're going to want to retweet this one tonight, and you'll see why. But this is one to definitely kind of put out there into the Twitterverse, and you'll find out why in a second. Before you do all of that, you can also go down to, I always get this wrong here, I'll wait for it to come by. You can go down to my Linktree address. All of my social media feeds and everything that I put out content-wise, you can get to through that link. And so it is literally everything. Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, Anchor, the podcast that I put out. You can also get to it on any of the podcast platforms that you listen to, as well as all of my blockchain-related accounts and links. And I would definitely implore you, in the nature of decentralization, to set up some accounts on those sites and on those blockchains, things like Odyssey and specifically on the Hive blockchain. And you will see why it's going to be really important, because tonight's guest is absolutely fantastic. We are talking to, or I am talking to, Nathan, who is, would you call yourself the developer over there at D.Buzz, Nathan?
I'm actually the co-founder and lead investor and advisor, and okay. I give technical advice, but I'm not the actual developer.
Okay, awesome. So you're not like actually sitting there putting the code in like it's the Matrix. That's good.
No, I'm kind of a decision maker and give advice and research new technology and kind of brief my team and keep up with what's going on. So and I, like I said, I'm the co-founder as well. So.
Awesome. All right, so we're going to talk about D.Buzz in a bit, which is basically the blockchain competitor to Twitter. But before we get into that, I want to give everyone who doesn't know you an idea of who you are. So just really quickly, what's your background? Have you always been kind of like a techie kind of person, or were you more on the finance side? And really, what kind of brought you to the blockchain ecosystem?
Okay, so I would say I've always kind of been a techie. I got my first computer when I was 3 years old. I'm 30 now, so I've been on computers my entire life. I started writing computer codes in my early teens. I was doing game development, when I was a teenager. After high school, I got into web development and working on website designs. And then I started researching about our financial system and how the dollar works and where money comes from, and I started getting information that was quite concerning to me, that we were using such a broken system.
Yeah.
And so that was always in my mind. I discovered Bitcoin in about 2013, and it seemed like a really great technology. It just was confusing and complicated to explain to people, and
Definitely.
kind of clunky to run on your computer. And because in the beginning you would go on Bitcoin website and try and download the whole node, and it would just crash your computer. And then I discovered, light wallets to where you don't have to sync the whole blockchain, and it started becoming easier to use. And I guess in 2014, 2015, I really become super interested in developing on blockchain technology and working on solutions. And so over the past 5 years, I've been very involved in blockchain development, and I've worked on various projects. Some have to do with Monero, not directly coding on Monero, but forks of Monero and CryptoNote and developing code there.
Yeah.
And then I got into looking at decentralized file storage, so with Filecoin, and I've participated in some of the different hackathons that they've done. And I guess about a year and a half ago, I had already been introduced to Steam, and so I was aware of Steam and had used it and participated there, but very little. And one of my friends approached me and really started trying to get me interested in Steam again and building on Steam.
Yeah.
And we wanted to build a decentralized social media that could compete with some of the other platforms that were, in my opinion, being problematic by suppressing information and basically, in our opinion, it felt like they were social engineering our society in a certain direction, and that was very troubling. So we began working on a system on Steam that was a decentralized social media, and then the fork happened, and we were just kind of left in limbo for a little while about what to do. But it all really worked out great as we came up with D.Buzz and started developing on it, using the previous code base that we had already had.
So let me ask you really quickly. So in terms of like when the fork happened, did you kind of have a similar experience to a lot of the other folks in that ended up making that transition to Hive? Was it one of those things where you felt like it was just kind of Steam moved in a direction that did not fit kind of the decentralized culture that you were really looking for?
Yes. And I guess I didn't have all the information, or I wasn't as aware as a lot of the big people, let's say on Steam were, of what was really going on. But I was kind of looking at it from both directions, and I felt like it was a really good opportunity if, everybody could work together. But unfortunately that didn't happen. And Justin Sun really kind of, in my opinion, did some really shady things with getting the exchanges to vote him in, all the witnesses, and forking out people's stake. That was, really went against what I believe in. So we decided that, Hive is the way to go.
Awesome. So I love that backstory. I've said this a million times. I love that backstory because, just having interacted on the Hive blockchain, it definitely feels like there is a sense of like community and a sense of, purpose and philosophy that really kind of enjoins a lot of the people on there, specifically a lot of the folks like yourself, that went from, Steam to Hive during that fork. Why a Twitter alternative? Was this something, were you really active on Twitter before this, and that's what you really kind of like wanted to, compete against, or what kind of pushed you in that direction?
Well, I'm not super active on social media, but I do use social media to get information, and it felt like the information I was getting was being filtered and fed to me through a straw, and I didn't really like that. I wanted to have like an unfiltered view of what is really going on in the world, and not have the overlords being like, oh, Nathan's not smart enough to see this, so he might have a bad idea if he sees this. Let me make up my mind for myself. I don't need you guys deciding what is true or not true for me. I'm smart enough, I'm intelligent enough, I know probably a lot more than a lot of these guys that are pushing the buttons behind the screen. So I think I'm smart enough to make up my own decision, and it just kind of irritated a lot of us that the information that we were getting fed seemed to be being social engineered in a certain direction. So that was our driving force to create this.
Yeah, I can say that there is a very how should I put it? There's almost kind of like a deprogramming that you have to do when you get onto the various apps that are built off of the Hive blockchain. Because to your point, when I get onto Twitter or something like that, they have gone through a ridiculous amount of basically psychological testing and things like that on the back end to prime that algorithm to show me the things that are going to keep me involved for the longest amount of time, right? To drive clicks, to drive interaction and things like that. And so when you get onto the Hive blockchain, it's not like that. It's not really kind of like you get to filter it, right? So like when you're, and I'm going to pull up D.Buzz right now just so everyone kind of like gets a sense of what it looks like. But the beauty is that, and I'm sorry if I'm stealing your thunder here, but the beauty is that you get to choose how to filter it, right? So like when I'm presented with something, like I can go through what's trending and the latest and stuff like that. But if I go straight home, right, like what's going to be fed to me is mostly the people that I'm directly following first and foremost, right? And then other than that, there is not going to be like this super curated, almost like cocaine type consistency to the feed that's going to be in front of me. There's going to be a certain level of, stuff that is brought to the forefront that is going to be, it's going to seem strange to a lot of people. And I completely appreciate that where, when something shows up in front of me, it's not necessarily something where I never would have found it, is what I'm saying. Like, it's one of those things where it's beautiful because you have this discovery that happens where all of a sudden, this post shows up and you're like, wow, I never would have known that even existed or that person was posting about these things. So I love that aspect to it. What are some of the kind of like widgets or kind of like, hacks that you included into D.Buzz? I mean, like, was there a specific set, like tool set that you wanted to include in D.Buzz when you were developing it?
Okay, so one of the features that we're working on and that's in development is the follow and mute list. So basically, anybody can create mute list, and mute list can basically be joined together. So you could create a mute list of people that you don't want to see any of their posts.
Yeah.
And then anybody can opt into your mute list, and then it puts everybody that you put on your mute list on their mute list too, and they won't see those people. That way the community can kind of self-censor itself. And then also, if you want to follow a certain set of people, then anybody can follow your follow list, and then they'll see all the content from the people that you see. And then they can join their list with other people's list and create their own list. So that's one of the features we want to have. Instead of having a centralized censor, we have the community censor itself, but ultimately the end user is the one that decides, how they want the content to be censored or what content they want to see, or what type of content they want to see.
So D.Buzz still D.Buzz is essentially still kind of adhering to the standard Hive witness system, right? Like there's no kind of like short circuit where now all of a sudden D.Buzz is specifically paring down things. It sounds like you really want to empower the user to be able to really kind of like hone their feed for themselves, right?
Right. I don't want to have any involvement in censoring content. That really needs to be up to the community. Now, there are things that are illegal that people could post on the site that we would have to take down legally, and we would do that. But for the vast majority of the content, we want the users to decide for themselves if they want to see this or they don't want to see it. And we don't want to have any control or, influence over that. It's really up to the users themselves what kind of content they want to see.
Yeah. And so that list building exercise, I mean, someone could probably someone's already on there where like, if any, bots so happen to exist on D.Buzz or anywhere else on the blockchain, you could essentially build a list of those, I'll use air quotes, bot accounts, right?
Right.
And so if you didn't want to have your feed flooded with that stuff, you would just take that person's list and essentially add it to your mute list, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I love that. And here's the other thing I think a lot of people don't, it's not that they don't get it conceptually. I think they just don't know what it looks like in practice. Like, you are ultimately responsible for how this kind of like works out, right? So for a lot of people are used to the decisions being made for themselves. This is kind of a very empowering idea, and a lot of people would kind of be scared of it, right? Like if they were presented with this and it was like, look, you have to go out and actually curate your own stuff here and make sure that, if something shows up, you actually have to tell the algorithm that you don't like it, as opposed to the algorithm, like, reading how long your eyes sat on the post, right?
Right. So I think that goes back to how we're trying to set up the list, is actually to suggest lists to new users. So you will want to follow the mute bot list or the mute formers account, where you have what we call forming accounts that just post plagiarism or just copy and paste, over and over. We'll suggest that you follow these lists. It's up to you whether or not you follow them. And then we're working on actually having a page that kind of has a curated list of different lists that you can follow, or you can add to your mute list. So you can go through different categories. I want to see content that's related to this. And then those lists have already been curated by other people, but it's really on you to select those lists and kind of, I've joined some websites before, and it asks you what are you interested in. So kind of a process like this: you select what you're interested, you select what you don't want to see, and then you use the platform. And as you go, you can change that. But it's transparent, so there's not me sitting in the background or someone sitting in the background shadow banning users or making people not show up. It's really all on the end user. And we're just trying to make it to where it's very easy for that user to be able to interact and figure out, kind of how the platform works and what kind of lists they want to be on or don't want to be on.
Yeah. Yeah, that's I think that's going to be unique to a lot of people. So there is kind of like this reorientation that has to happen where, they're used to the algorithm doing that work for them. And this is now going to be something that they have to take like a vested, not just an interest in, but an active, participation in, if they want to really kind of refine, what they're seeing and basically what they're having presented to them on the DBuzz architecture. So, all right. So in that sense, so DBuzz, so the algorithm is basically different, or there isn't really an algorithm. It's more of kind of like a, choose your own adventure in terms of how you're filtering this information. Are there any other ways that it also differs from, say, a traditional, Web 2.0 social media feed?
Okay, so there's 3 different features on DBuzz. If you look, you have home, you have trending, and then you have latest. So the home feed would be everyone that you're following. And so if you follow an actual person on Hive, anything that they post will show up there on your home feed. And then trending is going to be a list of people's content that has lots of comments or lots of likes. And that's kind of done on the back end of the Hive system. It calculates, what's trending and what's not trending. Mm-hmm. And we actually are just using, that default algorithm to determine what is trending and what's not trending. Okay. And then we have latest, and that's basically in order, in chronological order, as post or post, they show up there. And you'll see everybody except people who are on your mute list. So even people that you're not following will show up in the latest, so you can kind of find new content there. And also in trending, you would find new content. Really, on home is going to be the only place that you only see the people that you follow. In the other 2 spots, you're going to see all the users on the platform except people that you've added to your mute list.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I love the fact, and I would imagine with the list building tool, there's also going to be some, ability there also to, at least explore, in a more kind of like curated way, which is going to be fantastic because then you can pare it down by, um, whatever the theme of whoever is building the list, right? So, accounts that talk about XYZ topic or accounts from a certain area or things like that, travel blogs and stuff like that. I think that's absolutely fantastic. How has it been? So how long has DBuzz been out there? And then in terms of kind of like the population, the user population growth, how has that been as of recent?
Okay, so we started working on this very end of 2019 with just a single developer. Just as an idea, we weren't really ready to go like jump both feet in. We just kind of wanted to play around and see, and that was when it was still Steam. I guess after the Hive fork, we added some new developers and we released our version 1. And that was really a big learning experience, trying to develop on decentralized technology, but also have a website that's connected to the blockchain. So we learned a lot about it. And then after we released version 1, we hired new developers that had a lot of experience, and we actually built what we are currently running, which is version 3. We went through, we never released version 2. We just went straight to version 3. And we just keep kind of letting version 3 evolve into what it is right now. And it's still evolving. We're still getting feedback and coming up with new ideas. And yeah, so yeah, that's.
What were some of the biggest hurdles that you ran into? Was it just a matter of kind of the software, the programming language that was being used, or was it something other than that?
Actually, it was had a lot to do with the programming language. We ultimately ended up building in React.js. Originally, the websites that I've developed in the past and some of the developers that were working were back-end websites. So everything happened on the back end of a server and then was kind of served to your browser. And after doing a lot of research on this and kind of seeing what was available, we decided that we didn't want to have a back-end server. We wanted the entire code to run directly in the browser and be able to communicate directly with blockchain, the Hive witnesses or Hive witness, and not have the backend. So that was a very there was a lot of research and just testing that went into getting that to work that way and doing completely away with having a backend server. So when you used DBuzz, the all of the code is actually loaded into your browser, and it's actually a complete front end application. Now there are some features like the search feature that we have a backend API. So if you want to search something, it's gonna send it to the search server and then return your search results. But as far as your posting and all the content that's coming, that's all done front end and being communicated directly with the Hive witness servers.
And what does that do to say the speed or the user experience? Like, is it noticeable, one way or the other in terms of that choice between the back end versus everything running in the browser?
Actually, it is because now the backend we kind of removed the bottleneck of having the backend server that has to do everything. Now your browser is really the only bottleneck, and as long as your computer's decently fast and with an good internet connection, it's just going to communicate directly with the Hive witnesses and load everything in. And it really helped us solve a big scaling issue, because all really our server is doing is giving you the code to run, and then you run it on your computer, and then our server doesn't have to do anything else. Yeah. And it also allows for us to do things like use ENS, which is Ethereum name servers. So we can have decentralized domains that don't actually use DNS. So when you type in the dbuzz.eth, it will actually go and look on the Ethereum blockchain and pull up an IPFS hash and then download the code that runs DBuzz into your browser. And anybody can pin that code on IPFS. So even if our main server went down, you could still access it through ENS, and our server wouldn't even be running.
Awesome. First, huge shout out to Chris Rice, because Chris put out a buzz out on DBuzz, notifying folks of us being live. And Chris has a comment here that says, in terms of speed, we are slowed down a bit since Hive wasn't designed for Hive communities, but our lead dev will make a change to HiveMind to fix this. So is this just something where, now, first of all, is Chris involved in the actual dev process? Is that who Chris is?
Chris is a project manager and works in our HR department, and he is also a co-founder, and he communicates directly with our developers as well. And so, yes, he is.
Awesome. So he's basically saying that he's saying that since Hive wasn't designed for Hive communities, what does that specifically mean to say, like the layman here?
Okay, so there was when Steam originally came out, you just had the main feed. Everybody, when you made a post, it just went into the main Steam feed. Mm-hmm. And then we had communities that were released, and basically the idea of communities, at least the way it was explained to us, would be kind of like a separate community away from the main feed. Mm-hmm. But it didn't end up really working like that. All the communities still show up in the main feed. So there's some
basically it's just a tag, right? That gets assigned to someone who says that I'm posting to XYZ community. Is that the way it works?
Right. So I think what he's referring to there are they're programming some various filters into HiveMind, which is basically the API that pulls information off the Hive blockchain and then serves it to front ends.
Yeah.
To where they can actually filter different communities. And Hive wasn't really the current API wasn't really designed to do that. So that's actually something that they're working on right now to kind of help with curating content or being able to give people more choice over the content that they want to see on whatever front end they're using.
That's interesting. Yeah, and I think Chris clarified and said DBuzz has to filter out all the other communities on Hive so that only DBuzz community shows up. So that's interesting. So in essence, that basically means that, like, say I go on, PeakD or something like that, right?
Right.
PeakD will pull pretty much all of the communities that you either have, followed, or even, if it shows up in trending or something like that. But so essentially what you're saying is DBuzz will only pull up things that are essentially relegated to the DBuzz community. Is that right?
That's correct, because our app is a short form, so we only right now support short form content, like a social media, like basic social media. So long form content, blog posts and stuff like that wouldn't actually show up in the main DBuzz feed. We're actually working on having a long form version of DBuzz that would have long form content, but we're trying to kind of figure out a way to give people, some people are interested in blogs and some people are interested in memes,
Yeah.
And we're just trying to separate those two apart so people can have the experience that they want to have on the platform.
Yeah, I would definitely say that that's going to broaden the appeal of the offerings that are out there on the Hive blockchain, because I completely agree with you. Like, I mean, Hive in its essence right now, a lot of the social media aspect of it is very much blog driven. So if you're a blog person and you like writing long form and reading long form and things like that, outside of something like a 3Speak or something, you're really just getting written content with images embedded. And so, yeah, anything that you can do to increase the speed at which you can then, basically call up and present, these short form posts or kind of like data sets that are on the on the blockchain. I think that's going to be fantastic for the user, and you're going to be able to attract more of these people who look, quite frankly, I'm one of those people sometimes where I have the attention span of a goldfish. So that's exactly what I'm looking for. I'm looking for short and sweet, get to the point, like 100 and what's your character limitation? Is it similar to Twitter, or is it something different?
I don't have the exact number right now. I think it's a little bit longer than Twitter.
Okay.
But I don't have that exact number right now.
Is there any
I'm sure
opportunity in the
Chris has
future
that.
to say, like, take a long form like hive.blog post and truncate it but push it to DBuzz?
Yes, there is, and one of the features that we have is actual buzz button, and anybody can embed the buzz button on their website, and then basically it does exactly that, and then it shares it to the DBuzz feed, and then if people will go down and click on it, then we'll actually pull up the actual blog post.
Awesome. And Chris is saying 280 characters. So, yeah, you could say a lot in 280 characters, I think. Yeah. But it's I've seen some of the blogs that are out there, and what's interesting is I don't know if you've ever been kind of like a blogger yourself, Nathan, but occasionally I'll write a blog, but I would say it's not something where I'm more of like a video recording kind of person, and so a lot of times, like if I put something out on the blockchain, it's like a one paragraph summary, and then here's the link to my video, like one of those things. But yeah, you could say a lot in 280 characters, so I think that's fantastic.
And I think a lot of people have 280 characters in them when they don't have a whole entire blog post. A lot of people just don't have writing an entire blog post. It's not written in their DNA. So I'm kind of one of those people. I've written blog posts before, but for the most part, 280 characters is basically going to summarize what I have to say in a social media post that I'm going to put up.
Awesome. Yeah. My brother is watching from Georgia, and he's asking, in that case, will DBuzz offer a community tab for discovering other community forums or content? So right now is pretty much the only filter on DBuzz essentially hashtags, or is there any other kind of community collections that you're looking? I would assume lists would probably be something similar to that, right? But is there anything other than that is down the road?
Well, we're currently developing blog.dbuzz, and that's going to be more along the lines of hive.blog or peakd, that will be separate from the actual d.buzz website, and we'll have all of the content that Hive blog or any of the other front ends have on the blog.dbuzz. But DBuzz will just be for the short form content inside the DBuzz community.
That's interesting. So is that going to be essentially, like if you prefer to kind of live in that 280 character world, but every so often you want to read a full form blog post or something like that, is that what you're building it for, that type of user, or is there the thought?
Yes, and we wanted to give users more control over the communities that they want to see and they don't want to see. Some of the feedback that I've been given is that people were complaining on hive.blog or peakd about not being able to filter out different communities. Like they're getting posts from other communities that are constantly showing up in their feed, and they would rather not. So kind of one of the things that we're working on with the blog.dbuzz is to actually give more controls over the content that you want to see or you don't want to see.
I love that. And this is another aspect of the blockchain that doesn't really exist in Web 2.0, or at least not in the same way, because you're all calling from the same blockchain. There's more of an opportunity for different developers out there to kind of, go in different directions and really kind of play and explore and solve different problems that might exist or that they think exist on the blockchain as far as the, either the functionality or the user experience specifically. And I appreciate that because, if you're in Web 2.0 land and if you would like to see something on Twitter, I mean, there's absolutely no reason why Twitter is going to do it unless there is like a ton of interest in it, or if their centralized, development department decides that that becomes a priority. Here, you could have, literally, multiple blog-based front ends that exist that are pulling from the Hive blockchain, and y'all can, differentiate yourselves in different ways in terms of how you, whether it's filter or the user experience or something like that, which is absolutely fantastic. So I appreciate that. What else? What have I missed on D.Buzz? Is there anything else that's kind of either not necessarily apparent to me or something else that I glossed over?
So one of the things that they're saying that, okay, for the update that they're doing to I just lost my for the Hive API.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, like I was saying earlier, our site runs completely front end. And one of the issues that we have with the scalability issue is that it pulls in a lot of content, and there's not a lot of, I guess, filters per se on the actual Hive Minds software. So the Hive Minds actually communicates with the actual blockchain and then filters the information. You can kind of select different data sets that you want from that. And then the front end processes that data. So one of the things that they're really working on right now is improving that to where the front end has less work to do, right? It's already selecting like set data points that it can pull, and it doesn't have to process as much data, and it makes the front end run much faster. I guess really, I think that basically sums up, kind of how it all works. Some people are wondering, okay, how does it actually work?
Yeah.
When you make a post on Hive, it actually is recorded on the blockchain, and it's done very similar to how you send a transaction with Bitcoin. And you could build basically the same thing on Bitcoin or Ethereum. But one of the biggest issues that you have building on other blockchains, this type of technology, is to create a transaction on Bitcoin. Maybe it will cost you $50 or $60. So every time you want to make a actual post, it would cost you a large amount of, Bitcoin just to post that to the Bitcoin blockchain.
It better be damn important.
It better be really important to spend that kind of money. And Ethereum's the same way. So the way that Hive solves that is through the use of resource credits. And so when you create an account, it comes with an amount of resource credits. And those resource credits, whenever you make a post, it uses a percentage of those resource credits. So the more posts that you make in a day, the lower your resource credits go. And then after so many hours, your resource credits start to regenerate. And over the course of a few days, if you don't make any posts, then you'll have 100% resource credits again. And you can, make more and more posts. And if you say you want to make a lot of posts or you want to make a lot of interactions on the Hive blockchain, then you could, buy more Hive and then stake it, and then you'll get a lot more resource credits. Sure. But for the most part, when people create an account, it comes with more than a sufficient amount of resource credits to use it in a normal, everyday way without having any issues.
Yeah, no, that I appreciate that too, because that's also a function that discourages, spam posting and things like that, right? Because you can't just start up an account with, basically no equity, so to speak, in terms of the amount of Hive or crypto that you have in the account, and then just, post endlessly, right? There is a limitation to it. So I totally appreciate that as well. So all right. So I think most people get an idea of DBuzz and kind of the tech and things like that. And for everyone's reference, if you want to go check it out, you go to D.Buzz, B-U-Z-Z, D.Buzz is DBuzz. Let me ask you, let's kind of like take a step back and kind of like talk about philosophically. You had mentioned things like, seeing where things came from, the currency aspect of things, and just talking about decentralization in terms of, the hard fork and whatnot. Where do you see things going in the world? I mean, it definitely seems like it's getting way more authoritarian than it is, erring on the side of, say, like, free speech.
No, totally, and that is extremely troubling just to see kind of over the past really. I mean, it's been going on for. I mean, it's been building up to this for a long time, but really the last year and a half, the world has changed a lot. Like, it's not. We don't live in the same world anymore, and just to see the amount of control that the government thinks that they're supposed to have over our lives. It is very concerning, and I don't know what the future will be. All we can do is try and stand up and push things in the right direction, and at least we're standing on the right side of history. We're doing what's right, by trying to give people freedom back over their lives. And people ask me about what my political stance is. And I really have no political stance other than I think there needs to be less government. So if you're about like shutting down parts of the government, I'm all about that. Let's figure out how to get less of this, and that's what I'm more about. As far as government, people ask me also, what's my agenda with DBuzz, and really I have no political or social agenda other than preserving free speech. That's really, it. I don't really take a very strong political or social standpoint on any issues. I think that discussion, let's have a conversation around it. Let's hear everybody's ideas, and may the best argument win. That's kind of my standpoint on it.
Yeah. What is the so I'm sure you're familiar with, like, the 50.1% hypothesis or whatever, in terms of people talking about whether or not, say like the United States government or China could effectively, stage a hostile takeover of, a blockchain, especially if it's attached to,
I would love to see them do that on Hive, because it would make us filthy rich, and then we would just fork off.
You just fork off and go do something else.
Yeah.
So walk us through that. Like, some people might
basically
hear that,
if they wanted to come in, they would have to buy up over 51% of the total Hive to gain control, which would make us filthy rich, and then we would just fork it and then create a new coin and fork their 51% out and be like, oh, yo, we have a new blockchain with all of our content. We're all, like, screw you guys. Like,
yeah. I
basically
love
the
that.
Justin Sun Sega proved that we can do that, and it works, and we all doubled our money. I mean, at least I did, with the whole Steam fork. So it was great.
That is an interesting dynamic. So you guys forked away from, see, like, this is also something people won't necessarily understand. So you Hive forks away from Steam, and so you have a choice, right? I'm going to stay on Steam, or I'm going to move to Hive, right? And when the fork happens, if your choice is to move to Hive, you then get what? Airdropped Hive, as opposed to holding on to Steam on the existing network, right?
Right. Which we got to keep our Steam too, and we all got to power down and sell it at the same price that are higher than what I paid for it. So it was great. And then I had Hive, and it was worth more than what I paid for it too. So I was, thrilled.
So this is something that I think the folks out there, there's tons of people that are trying to.
I mean, if the government wanted to come in and do that, I mean, I'm all for it. Like, go for it. Like, please do it, because we would just fork. All of our accounts would still be the same. We might call it something else, or we might just call it, Hive anti-government or something, like whatever. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. But all of our content, all of our accounts would be there, and basically the community would kind of get to decide, yeah, here's the government accounts and all there, so we just take them off of this fork, and then we're all going to go this direction. So
yeah. Well, so I mean, Jack Dorsey is already on the record saying that, oh yeah, sure, we're working toward and he used the word, I believe, decentralized or blockchain, type Twitter. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. From the sense that you think he won't do it at all, or from the sense that if they
I think
do
he'll
it, it's
do
going
it.
to
I
be some
just
kind
don't
of
think
like
that
abomination?
I think it's going to be like, okay, there's two different types of blockchains. You have a decentralized blockchain, which means that there's a lot of different people involved. And then you have a centralized blockchain, which is, oh, we have a blockchain, but we control everything that's on it. So yeah, I think that's the difference.
Yeah. In which case it's literally
it's still
just
the
the
same
exact thing. It's just
the
with
exact
its own
same
crypto.
thing. It just works with a little bit different technology or different code, but it's basically still, I don't think he's gonna. I really don't believe that he's gonna allow people to say whatever they want on his platform. I just don't see that ever happening.
No, I especially because whatever tech development he ends up doing, I doubt will not have. I doubt it will be free and
prove me
clear
wrong.
of some kind
I'm
of
all for it.
centralized government
if he does it
authority
and
input.
he gives free speech, well, great, perfect. That's what we've been waiting for. Do it.
Yeah.
Do it, please. But I just don't believe it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's a absolutely ridiculous statement, or if people are believing, that statement, I think it's absolutely ridiculous.
I think it's just trendy, and he likes to say trendy things, so sounds good. But
he
whether
definitely likes to control the news cycle. Are you interested in other areas of development? I understand that you're kind of like focused on DBuzz and then blog.dbuzz. Is there some area where you would also like to look at? Not necessarily that you have something in the mix, but I've talked to a bunch of people about NFTs. I've talked to a bunch of people about just kind of like publishing and what that looks like on the blockchain. Is this kind of? I think
we should be careful with the NFTs. I think that's like anyway. I don't want to really get on to NFTs, but yeah, I'm working on some other different. I'm always interested in developing new technology. It's kind of like my addiction, like oh, let's go splurge and develop some stuff and see if we can make something. That's like what I'm always doing freelance work to earn money, and then it's like, okay, now we're gonna go like gamble this money away on building something. So one of the things that I'm really interested in is working on trying to scale up blockchain and keep it decentralized, because it's one of the biggest issues that blockchain has right now. And while we see like these outrageous fees on Bitcoin and Ethereum, it's because decentralization is difficult. And it's very new technology. I mean, it's been around for a little over 10 years now. So really figuring out ways to scale blockchain, and I have some different stuff. I don't really want to go into it too deep, but yeah, I'm working on some different things to try and figure out ways to scale up blockchain and make it faster to where we can have way more transactions, and without having to run these massive nodes that store everything. How we can break this down and keep it distributed, because you have things like Ripple, which is super fast and scales, but it's centralized, right? It's not decentralized. So the idea.
What are your thoughts on something like Lightning or Ethereum 2.0? Do you think those are going to, essentially be a big step forward?
I think that Ethereum 2.0, I'm very excited for. I think they're going in a good direction. I think that it still needs to evolve more. We'll see. There's only so many hours in a day for me to be able to research technology and see what everybody's doing. So I don't have like all of the fine details on Ethereum 2.0, but I'm very excited to see. Lightning kind of worries me because I don't completely completely understand Lightning, but I've had people explain things to me that seem problematic with it.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure that that's really going to be a viable option.
Yeah.
But we'll see. We'll see.
It definitely seems like anything that's like Bitcoin related seems like it's going to be it's definitely more suited to big bulk transactions, right? Like not microtransactions. And so you had mentioned like money creation earlier on in the episode, and so my one thought, and I might be completely off on this, but my one thought is that Bitcoin has the potential to kind of be like back when a lot of countries were on the gold standard, to kind of be like, when the Federal Reserve actually had, well, I mean, they still do, but when they essentially,
Yeah, they should give it back to us too.
well,
I mean, so, really, if they want to talk about reparations, how about they give us our gold back? I mean,
yes.
They took it from our ancestors. That's our gold. Like, give it back to us, like right now.
Well, and that's an interesting thought, because I mean, it's not like they're necessarily using it to stake anything or
no, it's ours. They decided that they took it from us, and they said that we could get it back, and then they said that oh, now the dollars aren't. Well, hey, we want our gold back. I want my granddad's gold back.
No, I completely, and so in that vein, I think that Bitcoin sounds more like that kind of like anchor value token or crypto that gets passed around in bulk, right? Like, so whatever transaction engines end up being the fastest, they do kind of like those large scale transfers in the back end. Whereas, kind of some of the newer crypto, especially some of them or the tokens that derive their value or kind of like stake their value from Bitcoin, would be more those kind of like micro transactions. I don't know. Is that too far fetched in terms of, or do you think that Bitcoin eventually one day, like not tomorrow, but do you think that Bitcoin goes the way of the dodo one day and something else ends up unseating it?
I see that very unlikely. Because it's kind of already become like the de facto digital gold, and you have corporations like Tesla and Elon Musk buying up billions of dollars worth of Bitcoin. He has a vested interest in keeping the price of Bitcoin kind of staked, right, at least where he bought it or close to that, right? Yeah. And he has the amount of money. And when you have more and more corporations that all kind of agree, I mean, money is what we all agree on. So if everybody agrees on Bitcoin is the de facto digital gold, then it's going to be the de facto digital gold, because that's what everybody agreed on. As far as like an actual payment method for just buying stuff, the average Joe, Bitcoin's not really, right now, it's just not, feasible to use it that way. Maybe Lightning can provide that, I haven't really seen it get to the point where it is. I haven't really used Lightning a lot, so I can't really, speak on that too in depth. My favorite crypto right now is Monero. So not financial advice, but I like Monero a lot. Yeah, that's kind of my favorite.
And why is that your favorite?
Because it provides, a layer of security, or not a layer of security, but a layer of privacy that a lot of the other cryptos don't. For me, it's like digital cash. No one knows how much cash I have in my pocket right now. But if you know what my Bitcoin address is, you know how much Bitcoin I have in my Bitcoin wallet. But if you know what my Monero wallet is, you don't know how much Monero I have in my Monero wallet. And that's why I really like it a lot.
Yeah. So explain that to me. I have not looked into Monero that much. Is there a second level of security? So like just knowing the wallet address isn't enough. You now have a second level of security that's built into it.
So basically the way that Monero works is, if I send you Monero, you can't prove that I sent it to you, but I can prove that I sent it to you, but you can't prove that I sent it to you. You don't know where it came from. And no one can see where I'm sending transactions to or where I'm receiving transactions from. It's all encrypted through the use of what they call ring signatures, which I'm not going to explain right now. But it works, and it, basically protects your privacy from everybody in the world being able to know how much money you're receiving, from whom you're receiving it, and to whom you're sending it. And that, to me, is a must for any type of digital cash. I just don't think that everybody in the world wants everyone knowing, their financial standing, and it being a public record for any country, any government, anybody, any criminal, anybody to know, what you're doing. And it's very easy to link Bitcoin to identities and basically data mine a lot of information on people based on their Bitcoin history and their Bitcoin transactions. And to me, Monero is the leading option right now for, protecting our privacy and giving us a digital form of cash.
Yeah,
And they're always developing. That's one thing I really, really like about Monero is they're constantly rolling out, new updates, and the development is moving. And Bitcoin development really is kind of stalled. It's just not moving. It's just kind of stuck and can't reach consensus. But Monero is, every 6 months, it seems like they're rolling out, if not sooner, they're rolling out new updates. And that's what I really love about it.
Yeah, no, that is interesting, because I think a lot of people assumed that Bitcoin was going to be that thing that allowed them to essentially transact anonymously. And if it was at one time, it's not anymore. So much so that there was actually a number of guys up in, I'm sure you've heard of this, like up in New Hampshire, that end up getting nicked because I think they combined the Bitcoin with essentially like I think they ran like a Bitcoin ATM business, right? And so there was a certain level of untraceableness that went with, doing crypto through their various ATMs that they were putting out there. And obviously, centralized governments, specifically the United States government, is not a fan of not being able to trace currency and where it goes, because they like to get their pound of flesh.
What about their cash? I mean, how do they trace that? I mean, cash seems like the most untraceable form of currency there is. So, I mean, isn't that their own money? I mean, they want to talk about crypto is used for criminal activity. Wait a second. I thought US dollars was used for criminal activity. I mean, that's what I thought,
A lot of it at the federal government level.
Yeah. The federal government, the shadow government, and the banks are the biggest, using it for criminal activity. And I mean, that's not a secret. I mean, it's on the record. Banks are the only entities that can money launder and not go to jail for it. No one goes to jail. But if I money launder, I'm going to federal prison. If I get caught money laundering, I'm going to federal prison. But a bank, they just, we made, $15 billion money laundering. Let's just pay, $200 million and we'll just keep doing it.
That was, who was it, HSBC who got nicked for that one? I think it was HSBC.
Oh, well, a lot of banks. I think JP Morgan, and I don't want to go on the record saying, but I think I think anybody can do a couple of Google searches and come up with a list.
Yeah. No, that's also, like, we don't have to get too deep into politics, but that is also kind of like symbolic of the world that we live in. If like there is not an equal penalty of law, right? And so the equal like you are more an equal when you go onto the blockchain than you are anywhere else if you're dealing with some kind of centralized authority, because just that very example of a gigantic for-profit entity that can essentially take part in criminal behavior, and not just like minor criminal behavior, but really, really freaking awful criminal behavior, which probably finances, drug cartels, murder, human trafficking, name it, right? and they essentially can just get off by paying a certain amount of fiat in a fine. Whereas you're right, you and I, like, we would never be seen again. Like we would essentially be black bagged or put into a dark hole somewhere to rot for the rest of our lives. That kind of dynamic, I think, is also what screams for the need for things like decentralized, whether it be blockchain or some other technology that comes along in the future that allows for, a certain level of, one, anonymity if you want it, and two, a certain level of equality, or at least equality in terms of opportunity versus, your station in life or your lot in life being cast based off of, where you were born or who you were born to and how much money you have in the bank. Chris Rice, I will not put this individual's name up on the actual broadcast, but yes, he didn't kill himself. Has anyone seen his girlfriend / wife or whatever she was? But yeah, no, I'm right on board with you with that one. I think that is completely the scariest thing is that it's completely transparent and still nothing happens. Right? Like it is boldly done in public view and it's common knowledge and nothing happens about it. It's just kind of like, the price of doing business nowadays. But that's just one of those things.
I mean, to me, it seems like the entire political system has become, a pay to play system that, benefits a select few, and it's not really the interest, of the many. It's the interest of the few and their donors, and that's our political, at least that's the way it appears to me and a lot of other people. So, yeah.
Well, I'm on board with you, man. I'm believe me, you and I we're eye to eye on that one. This is one of the reasons why I really appreciate, the people, the technology first, but most importantly, the people that are involved in the blockchain community right now, specifically Hive. And so, yeah, I mean, we have a lot of work to do, and it's going to be a long time before, there's dramatic change that is really needed to happen now. But we're the winds of change are happening.
Pushing the ball forward,
Yes.
That's all we can do.
Yep. Most definitely. So, all right, I'm going to be respectful of your time. Last word. I mean, what would you like to say that maybe we didn't cover, or a last final pitch for folks to get on the Hive blockchain and use DBuzz?
Just make an account. If you have any questions, just reach out to us. It's pretty easy to get a hold of someone that can help you out. And buy Monero, not financial advice, but I like it. I think it's great. And yeah, that's basically it.
Awesome. I'm going to scroll my link tree one last time on the bottom of the screen. Everyone definitely kind of go out there, and wherever you do prefer to get your content from, check out the other channels that I'm putting this content out on on Web 2.0 as well as Web 3.0 and the blockchain. So definitely link up with me. Nathan, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Definitely stick around in the green room after I pull the plug here on the live. And I am just going to remind everyone, I am back on tomorrow night. We're going to be talking about whether or not centralized public education is still even viable anymore. And then Thursday we have a special one. It's marked currently as to be continued or to be determined, but we're going to be talking about community building with a specific example of something we're working on here in New Jersey, and I think is actually going to craft kind of my content going forward from here on out. So definitely hit that up on Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern on any of these channels. Nathan, thank you very much. Everyone else, have a good evening. There are so many reasons to decentralize, whether it's lack of control over your own data, platforms where you are the product and get paid little to no money, or censorship and government oversight into your personal communications. That's why I'm taking a journey to decentralize my social media as well as my life. Make sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell, and check out the Decentralize Everything playlist on this channel. Whether you're curious or looking to decentralize too, I would love your company as I make a move to break free, take control, and decentralize everything.